The normal Registeel is at rank 1 for PvPoke for the Fantasy Cup, but how is the Shadow Registeel going to work? We're going to find out today together, as we're going to have a little bit more of a spicier team. We're still of course going to have a Registeel on the line, even though it's going to be the spicier variant, which nobody is really using. But also we're going to have the Hexorus here, and we're also going to have the LilyNiRiain. LilyNiRiain is our Saysop, the Hexorus is our lead, and our closer here is going to be the Registeel. And here we're going to see one of the cool things about Registeel. Zepcan can now basically one-shot the Azumarill, as we will see, not here because the opponent going to use a shield, but you're going to be able to basically one-shot the Azumarill after a little bit of damage. And before, for the normal Registeel, you're forced to always go for 2 Zap Cannons because you're not going to get them into lock-on down range. But here, we're going to have them in lock-on down range, or here at this point actually already in knockout range. But yeah, we're going to have the lead of Hexorus, which is super underrated. This Pokemon is insanely underrated for this meta. I have not, I think, maybe I've seen one or something like this, but like I haven't seen really a lot of them. But this Pokemon is actually so good. Here we can still go for the Surf against the opponent, which they're going to shield up, which is totally fine for me as well. But breaking basically steel types and a lot of dragon types is just so cool for this Pokemon, and we will be easily able to win this first game. The next opponent is going to run a Ferrothorn in their lead, which is going to be our K-Force. They're going to swap out into the Flygon, and here is something that I actually completely forgot about. But Flygon is only needing 4 fast moves to get to their charge move, which is kind of wild. Like, I completely forgot that this was the case. But here we're going to see that we can still go for the Breaking Swipe. Gonna not get the debuff, which is kind of unfortunate here. It would be really cool to get the debuff, because then you're going to have a better matchup later on as well. But we can still go for another Breaking Swipe. This time around, they're going to most likely shield up again, and they do exactly this. And they don't get the debuff again, but I'm going to be able to catch the move onto my Weezing. And this is super important because like this, I can try to knock them out there, I thought, but now they decide to swap out immediately into the Azumarill. But we still have a Sludge on our Pokemon here, which is going to be amazing for us, as this is going to allow us to do a ton of damage against the opponent. We will see here the charge move coming through. It's going to be the Play Rough, and as you're gonna see here, we can just try to go for more Sludges, and one more Sludge after this one is going to be enough to knock them out already. And honestly, LilyNiRiain is so good as a Saysop right now. Like, this Pokemon is just amazing. I went for the Sempita here, which I feel like is the best play that I could have went for. And this is actually not going to be enough. And this was kind of surprising to me, but it's kind of okay for me. I'm still going to take it because I can go for the farm down here with the Registeel. They swap on into the Flygon. I have to swap out as well, and they're going to go back into the Ferrothorn. And I make a huge mistake here in this game because, as you're going to see here, I can still go for one Breaking Swipe, which is going to get the debuff, but I could have went for the next one here as well, and I should have done this, because if I went for another Breaking Swipe instead of going for like a little bit more of counters, I would have been able to put the opponent into farm down range for my Registeel. And this is costing me this game now. If I just went for the charge move, I would have been able to just farm them all the way down here at this point and had a move start for the Flygon. Like this, I'm going to be forced to undercharge, which does not really work because it's going to knock them out anyway, or try to lock on them down, but they survive with 1 HP, and this was my own fault. If I played it better, I would have been able to win this game, and this is something that's at least good to know. Let's take a look at the next opponent. We're going to have here the Sandslash in the lead, which is going to be a great lead for us because we have counter on our Pokemon, and I make a huge mistake here. And this is something that I learned basically later on as well. This was most likely one of my first games that I played with this team. Here also you see the insane amount of lag, which kind of does not allow me to like hit, I think, like 3 or 4 bubbles, which is really annoying because otherwise you would have been able to farm them all the way down here. But what he can basically do and what he should do is, if the opponent swaps out in either like the Tapu Fini, I guess Tapu Fini you kind of want to swap out a little bit earlier if you, maybe even want to go into the Weezing instead. But if they swap into their Azumarill, you want to stay in with your Hexorus in order to get more energy, and then just try to swap out onto the Ice Beam into your Registeel, because it's going to be the best play that you can do there. Here we're going to see the Sandslash is still going to have to take some counters from me. I can still use my shields, and this is the cool thing about Hexorus. If the opponent swaps out here, which they do, they still have to take some Breaking Swipes, and they are basically running into a situation where they're most likely going to get debuffed, which you're going to see here as well. With this debuff, I can actually take a Dragon Claw as well, which is kind of cool. Dragon Claw is coming through, and I can still go for my own Breaking Swipe, which should get the knockout here. So we're going to be able to knock out the opponent's Flygon. I can swap out, and now I just have to go for the Overheat here. And I thought of letting the first move go through because it's very likely a bait, because of course we still have a shield left. But I still decided to use a shield just in case, but sadly they can actually still get to a move, and it is going to be the Drill Run. But we can just barely survive, go for the Overheat, and knock them out. Good game there to the opponent. Honestly, Weezing still MVP for me, no matter on which team like this Pokemon is, it's always great. Next opponent, we're going to have a Lucario on the lead. Great lead force, as we have also of course counter for them, and counter is going to be super effective against them, and they're going to swap out into the Azumarill, which is going to be great for me as I can get some more damage, and of course counter damage is going to be a little bit better than like the lock-on damage basically here from the Registeel, but it seems like the opponent's Azumarill is very bulky, because this should not knock them out yet. Yeah, it does not knock them out yet, but we can go for the full farm down here, which is going to be great. I can just use a shield and I should be able to get the shield back anyway. Then again, this is something that the normal Registeel would not be able to do. They would not be able to go for the full farm down here, but we are going to be able to do that because we have the Shadow variant. And do I want to say that the Shadow variant is better than the normal variant? Definitely not. Like, the normal variant of Registeel is so clear-cut better than the Shadow variant. It is just wild how bad compared to the normal variant is the Shadow Registeel. Like, it literally just does not make sense to play this Pokemon. Just go for the normal one. It is cheaper, it has better IVs usually, it is way more bulky, of course. Here we also have horrific IVs because I only got one, of course, of them. And so, yeah, I would not recommend you to try out the Shadow Registeel, but it still was a lot of fun. We were still able to nuke some Pokemon, which is kinda great. So here we're gonna let this move go through. I'm just going to try to sweep endgame with my Hexorus, which he should be able to do. We can go up to 2 serves, and with this, there's basically no risk. They cannot swap out in time. We can go for the Surf here, gonna get that knockout here, as we're gonna see the opponent's Lucario coming in. Surf is going to do around like 50% of the opponent's health, and we see here already counter is going to be enough, and we can move on to the next one. The opponent got an error here apparently, but we're going to still have a great lead, so I guess that was their error. The opponent swaps out into the Azumarill, and I should have stayed in longer for the matchup here with the Hexorus. It would have been so much better for me just go up to like a serve or whatever, like getting in 7 fast moves and then swap out, but I didn't. And I also don't get the debuff here, which is also really bad, because if they have Hydro Pump, which they do have here, they're going to hit me for way harder, and so I'm still forced to go for another charge move. And like, this is the thing as well, like if you have the Shadow Registeel, you still need a little bit more damage first onto the Azumarill in order to knock them out. Here we were able to knock them out because I am gonna had to go basically for the Focus Blast, but if you stay in for a little bit with your Hexorus, you're going to be fine. Like, again, that's just the better way to play this matchup out. Just stay in with the Hexorus, get some free energy. Basically, Bubble doesn't really do any damage against you anyway, and yeah, try to win it like this. Here we're going to have to go up against a Togetic. This is going to be a little bit of a trickier one than you might expect, because Togetic is generating energy quite fast, and so while Sludge is going to two-shot them, they're going to be able to go for another Aerial Ace here. They can still already have another Aerial Ace stored, and they are also going to still have 2 shields stored at this point. So yeah, I'm forced to go for another Sludge. They're going to generate energy at the same pace. Aerial Ace, I think, is also 40 energy move like Sludge, so we're going to always get outsped there. There's nothing that I can really do on the long run, and so I'm now in a scenario where I'm forced to go for a Breaking Strike bait, because I expect the opponent wants to get the move off here against me, and they do, which is kind of great, so I decide to use a shield here. But I just have to hope that somehow I am still going to be able to win this game with my Hexorus. It's going to be very close. I can still get the knockout here with the Surf, which is kind of nice, as the opponent did not swap out. And we're gonna see the Sand Slash coming in, but we can still go for the Breaking Strike. Is this enough to knock them out though? It's going to be very close, and it is, and we can win this game. Next opponent, we're going to have here the Magnezone in the lead, and again a great lead for the Hexorus. Hexorus has so many positive leads right now, and here again, this time around, we were actually able to stay in, get a lot of damage onto the opponent with counter, and just swap out. And afterwards we can get hit by a Hydro Pump. I don't really care too much, but they're actually only running Play Rough as well as Ice Beam apparently, and so this is going to be a great matchup for me, especially after the Zap Cannon. If this gets the debuff, this is going to be amazing, and we're gonna see it does get the debuff, and so this next incoming move, even if it's a Hydro Pump, it does not matter, it doesn't get the knockout or anything. And as you can see, we can go for the full farm down afterwards now, which is like the cool thing about this Pokemon, because other will not be able to do so. We can still try to get the debuff onto the opponent's Magnezone here as well by going for the Zap Cannon, which does work out as well, so like everything kind of goes according to my plans. I can go back into my Hexorus. We have a Surf stored as well, but here I'm going to let the Surf move go through. It's going to be a Mirror Shot. They still have so much energy, and they get the attack drop immediately as well, which is really bad for me. They're gonna go for another Mirror Shot, but I can still at least retaliate with a Surf, which is going to be great, as this is going to get them low. But again, if I didn't get the debuff there from the Mirror Shot, I would have been able to knock them out at this point. They go for another Mirror Shot, and I just want to get some damage onto them here, so I decide to go for the Breaking Swipe. Gonna get the shield actually from the opponent and the attack drop, and the attack drop might be kind of crucial. I decided to use a shield here, which I shouldn't have done because it was kind of an obvious bait, I feel like, but I also make a different kind of huge mistake. I didn't go for the what's called the overheat straight away, because now they could have a chance to debuff me, which they luckily didn't. But also, this overheat is not going to do enough damage. I thought it would do way more damage here, and so I'm forced to go for a sludge, but we're still double debuffed. So if I went for a sludge burst, I would have been way better off as well. But still, we can maybe win this game. It's going to be so close. Can we farm them down in time? We can try to go for the sludge, but we can still actually win this game there. Next opponent, we will see the Slurpuff in the lead. Horrific lead for us. We have to swap out immediately, and we're gonna get out the Bastion. And yeah, like, this is something a little bit tricky. And honestly, I have to say, I think I maybe made a little bit of a mistake there by swapping into my Weezing instead of my Registeel. I feel like if you encounter something like a Slurpuff in the lead, I would rather go into the Registeel, because this is the worst matchup, basically. Weezing is the hardest answer to the, to the Slurpuff, because you're going to resist the fast move plus Energy Ball. They can only go for the Flamethrower, and Flamethrower is super effective against the Registeel, so like, it's not really the most ideal matchup there. So it would have been better to go for the safe swap of the Registeel here. I'm trying to do my best basically to still come back from this game, but it's going to be insanely difficult as the opponent is going to have access to Flamethrower here. They're going to outspeed me. I can still try to go for my Zap Cannon. If I get a debuff here, it would be really, really nice for me. I really need an early debuff in order to have a chance here. We're gonna get the debuff, so that's going to be great. But I'm still going to decide to most likely use a shield here, because Flamethrower is still super effective. We are Shadow, so this would do a ton of damage, and I can go for the full farm down, which does work out, but sadly we are like at 200 energy basically at this point, and the opponent has a Galarian Stunfisk in the back, which is also a little bit tricky. I'm gonna be forced to go for the Focus Blast, of course. I could have also went for the bait, but it doesn't really make sense to go for a 5+ energy move there just to get a potential debuff in a matchup where they're gonna knock me out with the Earthquake no matter what. But I'm forced to try to catch a move here. It did not work out. I can still go for the Surf here at least, which is going to do some decent damage against them. But as you're gonna see, they can go for the Rock Slide here. Unless it's going to be an Earthquake here, which I don't think it is. It is not. This game is sadly going to come to an end here, as I made a huge mistake, honestly, by swapping into my Weezing against the Slurpuff. Next opponent going to be Slurpuff here, and I do still the same mistake here, because it's like something that I just only thought about now, that it might be a little bit better to not go into the Weezing but into the Registeel there. So definitely something I would recommend you to do as well, but maybe this time around it's going to be a little bit easier for us. We will find out shortly. We're going to see the opponent going for the Flamethrower, still going to do around the same amount of damage as the Sludge did for us, but we're gonna see here something interesting. The opponent decided to swap out into the Dedenne, and basically what this kind of tells me is the opponent is very likely having like a 3x fairy team here, because otherwise why would you go into a Dedenne if you can choose which Pokemon you want to swap into against something like a poison type like the Weezing here, so it doesn't really make too much sense. What does make sense is catching a Discharge on a Dragon type Pokemon, so that's exactly what we're gonna go for. But we're also still going to be forced to go for a charge move here before they can go for the Play Rough, so I decided to go straight for the Breaking Swipe, which is gonna get the shield actually. And they swap out into the Azumarill, kinda proving me right here, knowing that they have now a full Fairy line. I know how to play around this. I can go for the Breaking Swipe, gonna get no debuff, which is kinda sad, but I can still go for another Breaking Swipe, hoping that I'm gonna get a debuff this time around. Let's see, does this work out? We're gonna get the debuff this time, and now I can try to swap out into my Registeel. I know that I can take a move. It's mostly going to be the Hydro Pump or something. It is the Hydro Pump, but they're going to be debuffed, and so you see already how big the difference is between Hydro Pump debuffed and non-debuffed. But I can just go for my charge move. This guarantees a knockout at this point. Zap Cannon gonna get the knockout here. The Registeel is going to town. We're gonna see the Slurpuff swapping in next, and we can just try to go ahead and use a shield. Never mind, I'm going to let this move go through. It's going to be the Flamethrower. I still have nearly a Sludge stored on my Weezing as well, and so I can just go for the Sludge here. I still have a ton of energy on my other Pokemon as well, and so this is going to be a good game at this point already, because I can just swap out, go for the Breaking Swipe, they go for their own charge move, I decide to use a shield, and I can knock out a triple Fairy line with a Dragon type Pokemon going for a Breaking Swipe. That's kinda nice for the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.